All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon, coming to the movies. Which movie I'm gonna watch? This is not any movies. So if you are here, it's because you are what we call cinephile, people who are interested with cinema. This is one of very controversial film for different reasons, but it's an important film. So before I do this, let me tell you about who I am for the people who don't know me. I've been doing this for about a little bit more than 12 years now, where the non-profit organization is based on bringing quality film to cinema and to other private places too, but really fighting for good cinema. As you can see, and I see this every week, I look at what's going on in the films, and I realize that it's really getting worse and worse. You know, it's very rare to find a good film. And even the good films, foreign films here, are 1% of the market. They're not distributed well. So on Thursday, I talk about The Stranger, a film from François Ozon, was a French film. I mean, it's very rare to find really good film distributed, even in the city. So as we go and we have more of these very big blockbusters, the idea of having a good film, it could be from any time, because I was saying you can go to see a Picasso 20 times. Why not going back to film that were quality films? So all the series are built by myself, basically, where I look at what is the important director, how can I give you a good image of cinema? So the Japanese cinema, of course, we're talking about the big filmmaker, and it's what I've been trying to do. So for the next twice more, you have two more Japanese films. In September, because I slowed down during the summer to prepare for September, it will be, I don't know yet, but something about Eastern Europe cinema. And two, I have another couple of places where I show films, and the film will be in May 17. I show Contempt of Jean-Luc Godard in a small space that I have in Directorial. So if you want me to give you or to send you email, you can write your email on the email list that there is there, and you get every month what's going on. So 17, I show Contempt. 21st, I show Separation, the Iranian film. And on the 31st, I show in Cranford, Elevator to the Gallows of Rimal. So all these films are great films, different films. They're not really part of the series, really, beside Cranford, who is doing a series of French film. So here we have one more film before the last one. We watch Kurosawa, Ozu, Mizoguchi is a big one, and now we're going to Oshima. So, two things about Oshima. Oshima, was born in the 1930s, so he comes from this era of highly intellectual people. So if you go online and you say, who is Oshima, they're going to say controversial film director, and he is, but with a lot of sexual content, it's true, and violent content, it's true, but he is an intellectual before anything. He defined himself as a Marxist. Politically, he is very, very on the left side and very revolutionary. It was the content that you are watching. You can see the content on the first level, and you can see the content on a different level. They are very revolutionary statements on how sexuality is used and how awareness is used. He was Marxist and he was a Freudian. So very strong in psychoanalysis and very strong in politics. So this film, I want to make it short because the movie theater told me that I have very little time to talk, so I will try to make it short. It's 1978. It's a 1978 film. He was awarded in Cannes the best director for his film, so it's not anyone, somebody who has a really great sense of film. And it has been produced by France. So it's a Japanese film that Japan will not produce because it was so controversial, by a man called Antoine Doma, who really produced both of the film. The Real on the Senses, with like the big scandalous movies just before, and this one is a little bit the following of it, and it's still really very difficult to be distributed. So when you watch this, we'll talk about the actors, the way he makes the film, what is his approach of the film, but before that, I have some very nice person here, who is a professor in Seton Hall in Japanese history, and I think that it's extremely important to know what we're talking about. So the film is happening in the end of the 19th century, 1895, and he has a lot of folklore of the time, and a ghost part, And you're going to hear a little bit about what is that and how is it included in the film. And after the film, which is not a long film, I mean, it's 100 minutes, I will talk about as much as I can from the director, from the actors, from the way how he shot the film, from what happened in the film, what is his expectation. He is known for the people who have been working with him as one of the great one. And for a lot of other people, he is known as somebody who is, very so controversial that he's very difficult to sell, and he was difficult to sell. But always great respected by the people who are making film and who are cinephiles. So thank you for coming, and I'll let you listen to Anne, who is going to tell you a little bit about that. And after the film, we'll go back and we'll try to do as much as I can through the process of the film and explain it the best I can. Thank you very much for coming.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Gadat. I am a history professor at Seton Hall. And I firmly believe that one of the best ways you can understand a country is by studying what it fears. And that's why I've actually developed 2 courses that I teach at Seton Hall. The history of Japan as told through monsters and myths. And so for me, this film is really an important part of that larger conversation. Particularly because for us to understand what Japanese society fears, it takes an attempt to remove yourself perhaps from your own fears. Because the fears in a society like Japan are not necessarily the same as fears in societies that are based and grounded in Abrahamic religion. In Japan, because they are not a monotheistic society, you have it being completely okay to have multiple different religious beliefs as well as moral systems. And the moral system that the Japanese follow, which is not a religion, is Confucianism. For a lot of people, it's hard to understand moral systems that are not tied directly to some form of faith. The other 2 big ones in Japan are Shintoism, which is an animistic faith, as well as Buddhism. So all 3 of those kind of come hand in hand when we try to understand Japanese myths and monsters. And they're kaidan as well, and this is a kaidan film. This is a film that is based talking about ghosts as well as many other things, as you'll see. And so from Shintoism, there's not a ton in this film that we need to know. The one thing you need to know is that for Japanese society, monsters and ghosts and the unseen have to exist in order to balance the seen world. So we all exist in the seen world, but the unseen world is right there at any time. And so the idea, and we'll see in this film, when you see ghosts, it's not a, oh my God, there's a ghost. It's a, I can see this ghost now. I may not have been able to in the past, but it's not as traumatic of an event as it perhaps would be in other traditions. So you have this parallel and balance of the seen with the unseen. The other thing you need to know about is Shintoism is a religion that's about life. Death is really the purview of Buddhism. So within Japanese society, when we talk about death, we're talking about Buddhism. Buddhism has 2 main things we need to know about, and the first is reincarnation. We all know that, right? And then also karma. But reincarnation, if you are a society that fundamentally believes in reincarnation, then what does death mean? For me, who was raised in a monotheistic society, death is that I don't know what comes next, I really hope I was a good girl, and I have an afterlife. But in a reincarnation-oriented society, death is just a new beginning. But it's a new beginning where you get to start over and continue to move forward in an unending cycle of birth and death. So what is a ghost? A ghost is one of the worst things that can happen to someone in Japan. It's not that people have had bad things happen to them and so they want vengeance and so they become a ghost. The reason why ghosts exist in Japan is because society has wronged an individual's spirit. And their spirit is therefore ripped out of the unending cycle of rebirth. Not given to nirvana, where they can go and be peaceful, but forever trapped, unable to get the next step, the next part of their life. So ghost stories in Japan have this added weight of dread, of not just that something bad has happened, but that society has wronged this spirit. And so that's a really important thing for us as well. But it also comes in with, why do they get trapped? Because of that moral code that's not religious, Confucianism. Society owes each other a great deal in Japan. In Japan, it's not just oh, men have to be subservient to women in Confucianism. No, it's a reciprocal relationship. The wife and husband relationship is one of those relationships, and you need to have a balance where both sides are fulfilling their roles, or else society spins out of control. And so what we're going to see in here is we're going to see the upset and the ways in which society is out of control, and that's what results in the horror that we really will see in here. And then the last thing I want to share with you, because we do want to watch the film, is this idea of the time period. I am a historian, it's kind of my jam. So we're talking about a film that's set in 1895. That's right at the end of the First Sino-Japanese War. And so Japan was about 30 years out from a major civil war that completely changed everything. In 1868, everything in Japan changed. They began to modernize. They used this system called Fukoku Kyohei, which is to get as rich as you can, right, to strengthen your economy, and also to strengthen your military. And one of the huge signs that Japan had succeeded in getting rid of Western imperialism was when they beat China, who was the big kid on the block. They destroyed China in the Sino-Japanese War. It wasn't an even match. The Japanese absolutely trounced China, which had for over 3,000 years been the big guy in the region. So Japan had emerged at this moment as triumphant and as the strongest Asian power, and was beginning to get taken seriously by Western Euro-American powers. They get their first colony, they get Taiwan, and so it's this moment of jubilation, but also this coming in fruition of a huge change from absolute destruction in 30 years to one of the strongest powers, and the strongest non-Euro-American power, you could argue. This film was filmed in 1978. And 1978 is about 30 years after Japan loses World War II. And after Japan loses World War II, as we know from the earlier series, it was a destroyed country. In 30 years, by the time this film comes out, Japan is now a rising giant. It is the second largest economy in the world. People in America are boycotting Japanese products and burning them in front of Congress because they're afraid Japan's going to become #1. And so what we see here is that same kind of transformation process, where we're going from nothing into this new burgeoning, huge powerhouse, but what does that mean? So all of those things are what I want you to keep in mind, and have fun watching the film.
Just one more thing. I don't know if you know about the film. It's a film with graphic sexuality scenes and violence. You know, I would try to put it in, but some people maybe don't know. So just be aware of that. The Realm of the Senses, who was a film before, was more even graphic. So this is less graphic. It's more acceptable, but obviously for the regular film goers, this is still very extreme. So just get ready. But I'm sure you are ready already. All right, thank you very much. So let's watch. Of like a sexual encounter, it's much more than that. It's a really, really a strong statement against society for two reasons. First of all, because of this impossible to stop passion, where passion takes you. In the realm of the senses, it was the same. It takes you to the end, it takes you to the max to be able to live fully. And the second thing is like the vision of all society on that, and the impossibility of like not being able to control that. So that is one of the main message. There is many others, but this is one of the main message. Coming back on the production of the film took 1 year to make. The two actors are the same actors and in the Realm of the Senses, so you have a very trustful director with these two actors. And when I saw the documentary on the actors, they say they trust them 100%. Especially the woman who's playing the role was not really new in this kind of film, and after the Realm of the Senses, she was really very trustful to Oshima, and the man who has been doing many films with him, you know, so was really two very, very well connected. So they had extremely good connection. One thing that you should know, as you know, most of the film directors take 2, 3, 5, 10 takes, one take Oshima. So he prepared the ground so well for the film that it was the first take. Most of the time they say it was the first take, and he gave to the actors not really the improvisation of the scene, but he makes them show, and I think it's really important to know, on the frame of the camera,
where they're going to be acting, and he lets them do whatever they want in this perimeter. Very different than all directors. He has a very sensitive approach to his actors and to the situation, and he really is very connected to nature for the fact that this was made in 1 year, and all the scenes with the season were shot at the same time. So there is this kind of like, I would say like a kind of a logic of all these elements are put together. But in one way, like every other film, you have the message which is very strong about rebellion, and two about like feeling and how these are really the most important rebellion, because it's not something you can control. You can go in two things there. The surrealist revolution obviously in the 20s and the 30s. Of course, we're talking about 1970s. Pasolini died in 1975 after made Salo. So we have a very strong situation in the 1970s about this rebellion idea of society and connected with sexuality. Some of the people say, and he said himself, that he was really kind of pro-feminist, because in this character, the woman is not a victim. It's what he said. Of course, many other people say that is not true, but as much as Mizoguchi, the one that we saw before, the woman is all the time a victim. Here is a very different aspect. The passion which is taking you the same ways, and the man and the woman. So there is all these linear things or different ways of looking at it. As you see it for the first time, you see just really the pure action. You realize that there is a message on it. He's a Marxist. Remember, he said he's a Marxist, very on the left side against the establishment, and he's a Freudian. Sexuality is extremely important in Oshima, and he will do this always, and against, obviously, how the world of film. Luckily, the French, produced this film, but nobody wanted really to produce, and you have the censorship on this. So all the elements of the film are controlled by him, in a way that sometimes they stop shooting for a little while, and when they were shooting something, everything was really very clear, one take, and besides, he says two things like in the film that was very difficult. When he tries to break the door was like so well solidified, like they make it like so hard that he broke his shoulder. He had to go to the hospital because they wanted to make it really believe that this door was really difficult to break. So in the production level of how everything is done, it's a very methodic way of doing a film, very creative, with a vision. And of course, he says that he treated, his actors extremely well, and they had a lot of respect about how he was doing or what he did with this film. So besides the fact of like this massive, this really main message on society, you have this human impossible to limit or to control passion and sexual desire. So this making all this together in a part of the 1970s where all was really already very tumultuous everywhere in Europe and everywhere else in Germany. There was a lot of political movement. Oshima comes as a speaker of a young generation of very revolutionary in every way. So this is a little bit what I wanted to tell you briefly about the film. I'm going to say and tell you something here.
I'll also keep it short. I think it's really telling that the French title of this is translated as Empire of Passion, but the Japanese title for this film is actually Ai no Bore, which is actually a reference. It's basically the love of a ghost. And the ghost that they're talking about here, yurei is the word they use repeatedly in there. Yurei is the generic term for a ghost. Ebore is simply just a recently deceased person. There's a reason why that there's 3 years between the murder and the ghost sightings. And that's because in Buddhism with last rites, you do have the final last rites that puts and stops a vengeful ghost from rising, stops the creation of yurei, is done 3 years. Well, it's actually 2 years, but they say 3 years after the death. And so this really is a restless spirit that was not put in such a way that they can move on with their ancestors, or that they could then begin the new cycle of rebirth within Buddhism. So a lot of the imagery we see in here, the falling leaves is another Buddhist metaphor about transitions between the life of summer and then the death of winter, which then will begin a new life cycle. So we see a lot of Buddhist imagery throughout this. And I think I want to hear from you guys, so I'm going to stop talking so we can have some more questions.
We have so little time, you know. So please, any questions?
Any questions?
Yes. Yeah, question. You mentioned about Japan's economy being number 2 in the world at this point in time, and America being threatened by that, burning Japanese products outside of Congress in the 70s. I saw that it's a co-production between Japan and France at the start of the movie. I'm assuming there wasn't any sort of like nearly as much hostility from Europeans, or at least the French.
Yeah,
at
the
this point in
French
time,
were very
historically.
I don't know about the French. I will leave
I
it to
know
my
about
French.
French.
You can talk about the French.
I know about this.
I know what
because
the Japanese.
France was really very, very strong on the support of this kind of artistic movie because they supported Pasolini very much. So they knew at that time that all these kind of like controversial things were very important. We were in France too at that time, very controversial and very politically active, even in Germany and in Europe, on the left side. So this is really something we represent a lot about, like the rebellion against the establishment of that time, by obviously not every director, but directors who were really trying to just break the rule and were more controversial and very revolutionary. So that's what France was at the time. France, I mean, towards certain things. And of course, remember, he was loved by Cannes. This is a man who got the best director of the Cannes Film Festival in 1978. This is not everyone, you know. Best director is a very important thing. And I saw a documentary on him at Cannes. It was like thousands of people, you know, I mean, really thousands of people. He was kind of, you know, a star, really important star at the time. And two, I don't know if you ever saw that he looked really like a man of the 70s. He had long hair, Oshima, very interesting, with very nice glasses, extremely well dressed. I really like this look too. Anything that, I mean, it's like we have a short time, so it's difficult to just go over a lot of things, but whatever you can. Yeah.
What's your interpretation of them going down in the well at the end, and then you see them appearing in her house again? Do you think that they died? And that
In the mud you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, they don't die, you know, they are there, like, the well is like an idea of like they wanted to get the ghost, but really the scene was very strong, people talk a lot about them, it's like, even through the mud, even to where Earl is not watching it, where the body is even going, the desire stays. And I think this is a very important for him to see desire and passion go over everything, even death. You know, so there is this kind of like extreme about it. But that's really where I see it, and even in death, you know, they are there. Even, I mean, there is a beautiful shot. It's like when the army comes, like, and they open the door, you know, they are like screaming, and here you have this absolutely beautiful shot of the two bodies, and lace it with each other, and really like a strong feeling of being together.
They weren't muddy. They were.
No.
It was just their bodies.
Yes, yeah. But then it was really clean, because, you know, you wanted to make a difference between certainly reality and something more spiritual, you know, something like this. But it's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously, they take them and they torture them. Anything? Yes. I can see. Yeah, go ahead.
The Denzo character, the one who was always screaming and running around and
Yes,
yelling,
brother,
was there
the
any,
brother.
was there, okay, he was a brother. Okay,
Brother,
I was wondering
yeah.
if there was any, like, deeper meaning to that, why he was acting that way.
No, I see there's a brother being like, he looked like he went in the war or something like
It
this.
looked like a PTSD sort of idea. Both of them had fought, I think, in the Sino-Japanese War.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
But I think that also, when we're talking about the 1970s, I think there's some commentary, particularly in that character, about the post-war experience. And I also think it's very important that he chose for the man who committed what I would consider rape. And then throughout the whole thing, I think that the fact that he was a former soldier was also very important.
One thing too, they talk a lot about how they shot the people of the village. This was very interesting too. When I discovered as I was listening to him talking about it, when they shot the civilian talking about what happened with these two people, often from the back. And they say they really didn't want their face, and even often as around, they are surrounded, they are sitting down in a circle, a lot of image from the back, and after a little bit for the face. So these are really what Oshima too, as a director, was really, made a statement about society. He's reacting to this. Society is really cruel. Because even so, whatever they do, they don't give them one little break of not being able to love each other, because they could have lived together, whatever, and they go on his case up to the end. And that is another statement about him. Even so, it's based on the book. I think always that the visual and the language of cinema is so much stronger by the way how the elements are put together and are presented to the public, that it's really a very, very strong statement. I learned how to love Oshima. It didn't come so easy. When I saw The Realm of the Senses the first time, it was years ago, and as I was looking at it and watching it, and as I do a lot, I investigate a lot and look at the stuff, I realized how powerful he was in his message for the 70s or for today's. But he really, too, defined himself as a feminist. He really did. Well, I think that's a little crazy, but he did.
Yeah.
It also is important that the villagers are there. The only way to put to rest a yore once they've come back is to have the community put them to rest.
Yeah.
So the retrieval of the body and then doing the last rites is the only way, and it has to be done by society at large.
So just in your commentary, I guess that's your kind of opinion, I'm not quite sure if you've read about the director and what he wanted the audience to take away from this, but it seems that because of their forbidden love and their rebellion against society, and as you allude to, the horrific townspeople, we're supposed to sympathize with?
No.
Well, I mean, is that what there was so much of this issue with them not being able to have the love that they had for one another, and I agree, I believe it is true, but the premise that they are a sympathetic couple, I think is hopefully not what the director was trying to portray them as.
Well, I think he had a very strong idea about how the desire and the passion is blocked by a society who does not allow people to go over a certain limit. Now, this is what he say, what I know, and what my point of view is very personal point of view. You can think whatever you want. There is a lot of people who don't think about it. There is a lot of people who don't see Oshima. And there is a lot of people of society who censor him. But this is really a personal thing, But his situation and his position as being a rebellion against an establishment of society, and the desire is the strongest thing who can take you to a level of passion and love, that is for sure something he said. So it's kind of like, you listen what he said, because he talked, there is interviews and all kind of different things. But again, your interpretation is really what every artist will say. They say, you do whatever you want with it. For these people who like certain things and don't like certain things. But it's for sure is connected with an intellectual group of people who think that. I will even go back to the Marquis Sade, like the Sade, the reading of Sade, Everybody was saying, okay, it's erotic, it's sexuality, yes. But he was very, very active in the political vision and against the establishment. So it depends how you say it, But thank you. I think it's really important to, when we talk or discuss about the film, it's really important to bring your idea out there, because no one has one idea and is the right idea. Art is made for you to just reflect on this, for a yes or for a no, but makes the brain goes. That's what I'm saying, brain goes, and reflection to be able to discuss it and do something with it. Yeah.
Is any interpretation of when he asked her to shave, why she cries so much? Why affect her so much? If they was couple,
Where did they cry? When did she?
When the mask was shaved.
yeah, it's not cultural.
I saw two things in the request for her to shave. Number one is, in Japanese film, and even all the way to today, women cannot show pubic hair. And so that is one thing, that pubic hair is definitely a marker, particularly for a married woman. It also is a transition from child to adult. But I think in this, the issue was he wanted to possess her, and that was his way of possessing her in a way that even her husband wouldn't be able to deny. And so I see it as absolutely a power play on his part, and she's aware that once that happens, which she chooses not to have stopped, or doesn't get stopped, I don't know who I want to blame for that. But at that point, it's a point of no return. She can't be having the secret love affair. It becomes a public to her husband at least love affair.
It was this, I find this interesting that, you know, this idea of like the feminist idea and everything else, because they say, even so we can see Darcy as a victim. She's not really the victim of Mizoru. She's a film that we, you know, completely independent woman. She has something there for herself too, you know, and live her passion. And that it's something too, you know, to look at it, you know. And you know, the elements are very, very strong. The voiceover too is very strong, you know. We don't realize that the end of the voiceover and covering everything else by saying it, what happened at the end, it's a nice, not nice, it's a really smoother way of finishing. Remember, the end is all the time whatever you live with, and this you live with the end, you know. It's give you a sense of like how after they buried them, how these two are in another world somewhere. Are they together? Is there a statement of something negative? No. Somebody's coming. So is it finished?
Yeah.
I should take it. All right, guys. I'm sorry this was a very short session, but thank you very much for coming.